So I wanted to ask you about confusing words. As an American, when you came to Australia, what are some of the Australian expressions that
Oh.
had you scratching your head in wonderment and confusion?
Well, look, it's everybody said that Australian is a different language. It is, just like British English is different, and American English, and there's Southern American English. It's not just a dialect; it's a different language. The basics. So, and my wife would say, "Hey, can you go get the cozies out of the boot?" Okay, but well, it's the bathing suits out of the trunk, or where's your registration? It's in the glove box, okay, as opposed to the glove compartment, or little things like that. And there's a million of them, and not only do you have different words. I mean, my God, don't ask. So Australians love to ask Americans how to get someplace because they know that they're going to talk about the best route. Which they let me.
They just love you.
They
Say
let me
that's
talk
what-
and say, well, the best route to get there is this and this and this, and
They're probably snickering.
they're snickering, and then they would ask me again. And for those of you who don't in America who don't know what I'm referring to, that would be having sex. But then there's the abbreviations. Cigarette is a ciggy. And then there's
Or a fag, which
yes,
is sort of a British
with the
term.
British, yeah,
Yes.
exactly. But I understood that before,
Yes.
because I think that I'd been watching TV or something. But then you get into the things like nicknames, and then the words that don't have direct analogs. And you think of a word like mate, which you think, oh, it's a friend, it's a buddy, it's a pal, it's a dude, it's what. It's really not. And I found this out because, especially men, throw around mate all the time.
If you don't know someone's name.
Well, yeah, and good to see you, mate, and oh, mate, and there's mate. The way that we say in America, buddy or pal, but it's not the same. What I've learned is that mate can either be somebody you've just met, somebody that you're on the phone with. All right, mate. Okay, good. No, good to talk to you, mate. I could have just met that person. It is this sweeping generalization, but also there's mate and there's mate. And I learned this, is that people can be angry at you and call you out, mate, right? You wouldn't say buddy, okay? You would say, you asshole. But all somebody has to do is go, mate, and you've done something wrong. Struth is another one, okay? I mean, that's an old word, but I've heard it's the truth, it's struth, but I still... not sure, and fair dinkum, I'm not sure what that
A
means.
lot of those expressions, more modern Australians don't use.
Yeah.
They're in the old movies, the old Chips Rafferty's.
But they're still
type
part of
movies.
they're part of the language, because I think that there are certain specific instances in which fair dinkum really applies. I still don't know what it means, and I've talked to 1,000 Australians, and they all give me a different answer, but they know exactly when to use it. I think Americans just use language so much. And there are so many words for everything, but nothing is really specific. I mean, if we go back to mate, when I was in the movie industry, everyone is your best friend. Or they're a complete loser, right? But you could have met somebody once and they're your best friend, and nobody calls you out on, do you really know them? Well, you wouldn't use, if you were referring to somebody in that context, so let's say we're talking about somebody famous, you wouldn't use the word mate unless you meant it, unless it was really true. Because I think that there's a sanctity around the word mate, even though it gets blown out so much. But to call somebody a mate is very special. And I think this is something that pervades through the Australian language, that there's a lightness in the abbreviation and making up all kinds of crazy words, but there's an honesty to it. And I think that Australians is funny and sarcastic and glib.
Yes, do you get the Australian humour? Because Australians like to take the piss
Yes, that's another one. Take the piss.
out of people,
Yep.
and it's almost like a sign of endearment.
Well, I found out, this is very interesting, because when I first came down to Australia, I would be introduced by a lot of bankers that I was running around with, and people in the media, and they would say, this is Chris, he's from America, he worked a participant at Facebook, and they would basically do the resume bit. After about a year, I got introduced. I was sitting down at a big dinner at a big important and I didn't really know anybody, and the guy that I came with, they said, who's that? And they said, oh, that's the fucking Yank. And I realized that I made it. And I find that the more you get, the more people take the piss, the more endeared they are to you, which is completely the opposite in America. You know, there's this reverence. The more endearing you are, the more you lift people up and the more you say incredible things. But I find that if I'm not being insulted by my friends, I get a little paranoid.
And because I find Americans, when they are nice to someone, if you were to do that in Australia, it would be seen as sucking up to people.
Oh, of course. But again, it's part of the honesty, the brutal honesty that Australians have. If you're going to say something nice to somebody, you better mean it. And it better be true, as opposed to sucking up. Because Australians can smell bullshit a million miles away, where you're supposed to basically gratuitously lie and shower people with platitudes in America. That's just part of the conversation. You know, instead of g'day mate, right, which is an endearing, honest quality, you have to just talk so effusively about people. I don't miss it.